I'd like to call this December 10th, 2020 meeting of the Strongsville Board of Education to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Salee?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mrs. Hauser?
Here.
We are all present. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is district goals. Our district goals remain the same: student achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. The pandemic is challenging all three of those goals, but we have some recognition tonight that I think will highlight student achievement, so I appreciate that. Next is public comment. I do not see any public comment. And we can now move on to recognition. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. Well, it's been a long time since we've been able to have a recognition because of the pandemic, but we're thrilled to celebrate some of our outstanding fall athletes. So I'm going to bring our athletic director, Denny Ziegler, up to the podium to start the recognitions tonight. Denny?
Thank you guys very much for giving me the opportunity to do this.
Is it on? Is the green light on?
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go. All right, thank you guys very much for the opportunity to do this. It is one of my favorite things to do as an athletic director is to recognize our student athletes. There's a lot that they endured this past fall with the pandemic. I don't think they'll ever go through anything like this again in their lifetime, at least I don't hope so. And they showed a lot of resilience. And I don't just want to recognize the student athletes that are here now, but all of our fall student athletes. I think they all went through a lot of trials, tribulations, and when we talk about creating habits of good habits and of creating those routines that are excellent, I don't think there's anything this fall that was routine for our student athletes. And we had over 30 conference student athletes, all league performers. We had 3 players of the year. We had a coach of the year, and that's just the beginning of it. So I don't just want to take the time out right now to recognize those student athletes that are here, but all of our fall student athletes for doing a great job this past fall. At this time, I want to call up Mr. Cerrone, who is going to recognize our cross-country athletes.
Thank you, Denny. I also like to recognize my assistant coach, Natalie Camardo. If she could stand, please, and be recognized. Natalie's a graduate of Strongsville High School, who was an athlete of ours here at Strongsville High School, who was also a 3-time state qualifier, going all the way back to 2010, 2011, and 2012. And it's been an honor to be able to have her on the coaching staff, and I look at her as my co-equal in coaching. So thank you for all of your hard work and dedication, Natalie. It says in the good book, "He who honors me, I will honor." Before I begin my remarks tonight, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the girls' soccer team on their state championship. Your hard work and dedication to your sport was on display throughout the season, and I want to take this time to congratulate you and your families for your success. Congratulations, Todd, John, and JP, on another stellar year. The time, effort, and commitment you make on a daily basis to your families, students, and sport is to be commended and congratulated. 2020 has been a year like no other years. As a means of escape, I have picked up a book that I have read numerous times before, The Boys in the Boat, 9 Americans and Their Epic Quest for the Gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. It offers a glimpse into the journey taken by one of the participants in that boat, Joe Rance, and his story of hope, determination, bravery, loyalty, and perseverance. The book divided into 3 parts. Part 1, what seasons they have been through. Part 2, resiliency. And Part 3, the the parts that really matter. I want to read a short segment of the book, which is found within the chapters concerning resiliency. Many of them, quote, would never forget the day. For them, it was a dawning, the first real hint of hope. If there was little they could do individually to turn the situation around, perhaps there was something they could do collectively. Perhaps the seeds of redemption lay not just in perseverance, hard work, and rugged individualism. Perhaps they lay in something more fundamental, the simple notion of everyone pitching in and pulling together. Tonight, I stand to talk about Julia Isham and her accomplishments in the sport of girls cross country. Her journey is a collective effort by every girl that was a member of the 2020 girls cross country team. This year's season reinforces the characteristics of the Mustang model, namely resiliency, collaboration, and empowerment. All three were exhibited throughout the season by every girl, particularly overcoming the uncertainties of even having a season and persevering. Tonight, we spend a little time talking about the accomplishments of one of those girls on the team, Julia. Her tale, a tale to tell. Julia entered her second season looking to improve upon last year's showing. It was not one to forget. Julia accomplished much, but at the heart of her accomplishments were her commitment to the collective works and goals of the entire team. Julia could be found cheering on every one of her teammates after finishing her own race. Again, this speaks about her concern for her teammates. Julia had some impressive accomplishments. Second at the Boardman Invitational and Strongsville Invitational. First at the Medina Invitational. Greater Cleveland Conference Championship and District Championship. GCC Runner of the Year for her first place finish. A new school record of 18:23. Third place finish at the regional championship, improving from her ninth place finish the year before, and finishing 11th at the state championship out of 176 runners, earning all Ohio recognition, which is given to the first 30 finishers at the state championship meet. She became the first Strongsville cross-country runner to earn conference individual champion since 2006, and the first all-Ohio girls cross-country runner since 2001. After her second year, Julia has the school record, is the fastest freshman and sophomore runner in the history of the program dating back to its inception in 1979. While these are impressive accomplishments, Julia looks forward to returning back to the state championship next year, but this time with her team. Congratulations, Julia. And as my longtime assistant track coach, Coach Reese says, it's the journey and places we as coaches get to go as we watch our athletes not only persevere, but find success. Congratulations, Julia.
Julia, if you could please stand. No, Julia,
You stand.
this is your moment. So see that camera over there? We want to make sure everybody can recognize the phenomenal job you did. So please stand for a moment. Let the camera get you.
Congratulations, Julia. And just a side note, Julia is a two-sport athlete. She did play soccer last year as well, so she's very familiar with the success that not only her own with her running ability, but also with the girls' soccer team. So congratulations, Julia. Before recognizing Mr. Church and the girls' soccer team, I just want to say it was an outstanding honor to be able to watch them play the entire season. They went over 500 minutes of game time of not allowing a goal. They didn't allow a goal until, I think they gave up 2 goals the second game of the year, and then they didn't give up another goal until the entire playoffs. And so it says a lot about the character they have on the team, the skill set they have, the way they are taught, and how they approach the overall game of soccer. It was a group of girls that learned a lot from each other. During the times of summer with the COVID policies, procedures that were in place, they found creative ways to make themselves better as a group and as a team. So I want to recognize Mr. Church at this time and the girls soccer team for bringing Strongsville its first state championships in 2011. Mr. Church.
Well, thank you so much. It's a joy to be here. Before I start, I do want to congratulate Julia and your family. I know both her and her family very well, and tremendous honor for you. To run your best in the biggest meet says a lot. So congratulations, Coach Cerrone, on that as well. I think she deserves another hand. Okay. I'd like to start my remarks with some thank yous. Certainly my boss, Denny Ziegler, he supports the extras, and you know, it's more than just administrating the athletic department to him. He's pushing for new ideals and mindset and character development, leadership development, all those things we want for our student athletes so that they can go out into the world and embrace it as well-rounded young adults. I would like to thank our principal, Mr. Wingler, for helping us out this year. I'd like to thank Dr. Ryba, Mrs. Pelko, the rest of the board. You guys had the courage to give us a shot at a season, and I cannot thank you enough for that, because I know it was not easy. These guys spent hours developing protocols and meetings and ways of doing things, and then we had to adjust and adapt many, many times. And for you guys to support us, I just can't thank you enough. That goes to our trainers as well, led by Steve Pritchard. Tremendous amount of work that he had to take on this year. I certainly don't do this alone. I'm very, very thankful for my staff. J.R. Muth, who was not able to be here tonight, but he's certainly a great, great friend of mine and a great coach. My very best friend of 40-plus years now, I can't even count how many years that friendship has lasted. Coach Felton, who's here, give him a hand, please. Okay. I refer to him as the architect of this thing. I am a steward, and what he's done is amazing. Coach Nick Heiniger, where you at? Yes, give him a hand. Okay. A lot of stuff would not happen with Strongsville Soccer were it not for Coach Heiniger and his work he does with Strongsville Soccer Organization. We have one of the most special coaches any place can have in the country. Stand up, Coach Freddie. So, all you together, thank you very much for giving a shot and helping us along the way. I have to thank my parent group. I thank them out there, but they need to be thanked publicly. We hear a lot about parents these days. Listen, our group was unbelievable this year in what they did and the sacrifices they made, the extras that they took on. You gave us a shot. Give yourselves a hand and thank you. Before I speak about the soccer, I think it's important to recognize that the group of girls that I'm going to introduce you to, their cumulative GPA, I basically would have to double my high school GPA to equal their total team cumulative GPA. They had a GPA team-wise 3.78 as a team. So you've got some academic achievers, you've got people that serve the community in multiple different ways. They're involved in their school community. These are some tremendous young adults in that realm, and that's where we want them to be successful at in the big game of life. Soccer hopefully can prepare them a little bit for that. Listen, this season was an absolute magical thing. You know, you look at our history, starting with the first state championship in 1998, you look at a span of 22 years, this program's won 15 conference titles, 19 district championships, 13 Final Four appearances, 9 state final appearances, and now 5 state championships. Wow. For any one team now within our program, it is really hard to outdo the other, given that history. This team did it by giving this program their first perfect season, unbeaten, untied, against one of the toughest schedules that we could put together and one of the toughest schedules anybody plays nationally. Half of the teams we played this year were ranked in the top 15 at the time we played them. We ran the table. It was unbelievable. When you look at the tournament, and Ohio's soccer tournament is incredibly hard to win. In the big school division, you have 150 schools, everybody's in the tournament, you've got to win 7 games or go home over the course of a month's time. Mentally, physically, really hard to do. These girls average 4.5 goals a game in the playoffs. They scored no less than 3 goals in any one game. Absolutely amazing, amazing performance by them. It was unbelievable. But for me, you know, you look at the whole thing, what this group did was nothing short of miraculous because of the conditions that they did it in. But to me, it's not a surprise because you guys have committed to doing the extras and preparing for adversity. You know E plus R equals O better than almost anybody out there. And it served its purpose this year. You responded to everything with above-the-line behavior. And if you got below the line, it didn't last long. You picked it up and turned it around. And that's what our factor is, and that was the difference this year. When things get difficult, the great people get really good really fast. And as the year went on, we just accelerated. You guys found ways to learn. You didn't say, this group of 22, they didn't say, what can't we do? They said, what can we do? And through that, you guys found some amazingly creative ways to take in podcasts, to break down films, to break down books, to do virtual fitness with each other and hold each other accountable. At a time when most other teams folded or sat at home and waited for everything to lift, we got better. We got better. And when the season hit, things just accelerated from there. So it was a wonderful, magical season. Congratulations. I think you deserve a big hand for that. And if I may, I would like you to meet all 22 of these girls. They are special. We have not had much chance to celebrate. Again, I thank you for the courage and the stage for us to do this tonight, because it is nice to have closure to what was a very, very special season. So thank you. And should we hold the applause to the end? Is that how we should do that? Whatever. Okay. Oh, boy. Okay. I'm going to introduce, we'll go down and introduce everybody. If I could, when I call your name, if you stand up, and we will go from there. So first up, our freshman class, tremendous amount of promise. We have 6 girls here who are earning their first varsity letter. That is not easy to do within our program, and there is a tremendous amount of quality and character in this group, beginning with Macy Felton. Macy played a great center back with us, was honorable mention Greater Cleveland Conference for us this year. Thank you, Macy. GK extraordinaire, Abby Kudla. It's been a long while since we've had a keeper that could win a game for us. Abby, you are that keeper. You can win games for us, and we thank you. Grace Pasco. Julia Rocky. Skylar Rooks. Bryn Severance. And just an aside, it makes me so proud to look out here and see these guys, because we've known most of these kids since they're 6, 7, 8 years old. And to see you guys tonight makes me so proud. So thank you. That's just one thing that I wanted to add in. I forgot to add that in earlier. Our sophomore class, we've got Kayla Astrab, earning her first varsity letter. We've got Taylor Demerly. second-year varsity letter. And oh, by the way, just scored the game winner down in Columbus. Yeah, give a little love for that, I would think, yeah. McKenna Harden, first-year varsity letter. Haley Hightower, second-year letter winner. Kylie Jika. She was second-year varsity, honorable mention Greater Cleveland Conference, honorable mention Greater Cleveland. Next up, we've got our junior class of Sydney Flem, second-year varsity letter winner. Third-year varsity letter winner, which is rare, Claire Kansas. Second-year varsity letter winner, Reagan Kinney. Next up, we have an early commit to Xavier University with their third varsity letter, first team Greater Cleveland Conference, honorable mention Greater Cleveland, Libby Majka. Next up again, we have another third-year letter winner, Megan McFadden. An early commit to The Ohio State University, third-year varsity letter winner, first team Greater Cleveland Conference, honorable mention Greater Cleveland, Coley Sidlowski. Third-year letter winner, honorable mention Greater Cleveland, Libby Zacharias. How am I doing so far? I got everybody, right? Thanks, Freddie. You got me. Okay, thank you. Now, hey, I'm going to introduce you to a senior class now that is special. We refer to them as the captain's class, in reference to a book that Coach Felton and I hold in very high regards. A few of these girls have read excerpts of that. They exuded what was in that book. They're unbelievable. I'm just going to give this to you. They played, the four of them, were key factors in about 85 games in 4 years. They won 70 of those 85 games. That is absolutely remarkable. 2 Final Eight appearances, 1 state final appearance, and 1 state championship, one of our better runs that we've ever had out of a senior class. Give them a hand. Yes. This is a great honor for me to introduce you. First up, Memphis commit, 4-year varsity letter winner, first team Greater Cleveland Conference, first team Greater Cleveland, first team All-Ohio, second year in a row for All-Ohio honors. We have Peyton Felton. Miami of Ohio commit, 4th-year varsity letter winner, first team Greater Cleveland Conference, second team Greater Cleveland, Sarah Robertson. And yours may be one of the most watched goals that I've watched back this year, your head ball against Akron-Hoban. I just love that one, man. That was magic, magic. Cleveland State commit, 4-year varsity letter winner, first team Greater Cleveland Conference, second team Greater Cleveland, and the Senior Academic Award for Ohio, which is for a GPA of 3.8 or higher, Maddie Snyder. She led a defense along with her other defenders that had one of the lowest goals against margins that we've ever had in our history. So congratulations, Maddie, you led that. And we have Xavier commit, 4-year varsity letter winner, Greater Cleveland Conference Player of the Year for the second year running, Greater Cleveland Player of the Year for second running, first team All-Ohio, the first in our program's history to have 3 All-Ohio awards, and the Senior Academic Award, All-American last year, that has yet to be announced this year, Shelby Salee. So again, I thank all of you, and this is, you guys represent, you girls, you represent a message of what can be done when things are hard. Keep being that light for everybody, because you're a light for me, and you're a light for everybody in this room. So please keep it up, and again, I thank you very much.
Well, Coach Church, I just want to take a moment on behalf of the board to thank you, to thank the team of young ladies. The board was blessed this year. We had an insider on the team, so we could get all the inside information, but it was honestly a joy to be able to be a little more connected to the team than usual and to get those updates. So, Sherry, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, they would ask me too, in the middle of me, what's the score? What's the score? But it's been an honor for me to watch these girls over, some of you over your first year, some of you 4 years. And like Todd said, some of you I've watched, maybe 10 years. And it's been a joy to watch you along this special journey. Congratulations on the 20-0 record. It was a fun season to watch it all go down. And then to go down to Columbus and watch you dominate in that state championship. I don't know, I really, really wanted a state championship. I mean, I couldn't play, but I really wanted it. You have brought so much joy and pride to the team, to the athletic department, to the school and to the community, and I'm so proud of you, as are we on this board. I know that the underclassmen will continue the tradition and legacy, because you have every year performed well, and I know these seniors, Maddie, Peyton, Sarah, and Shelby, will do phenomenal things in their futures and at their colleges. So congratulations. I am so very proud of you guys.
I just want to close with, I'm going to start by thanking everyone. I'm going to thank the coaches, Coach Church, Coach Felton, Coach East, and all the other coaches I'm forgetting. But thank you for your leadership. We appreciate it. I want to thank the parents. As parents, we all recognize the sacrifices you make to raise your daughters well, and you've done it in an outstanding way, so we thank you for that. And I want to thank the ladies on the soccer team. I am fond of saying we are proud of you, and I say that for a number of reasons. Number one is because we are proud of you. The other reason I say it is I don't think young people hear that enough, but you have done the right things, the good things. You've done all the things well, and you deserve all the honors you've earned through your hard work and your luck and your sticking together as a team. So we're, again, congratulations. We're very proud of you. One of the things I'm fond of saying is one of the reasons we're proud of you is that you are models for younger Mustangs. And now that you've done that, other younger Mustangs can see what you've done and set their minds to do it. But what is particularly pleasing to me is you're an example of that. You all were young ladies, and you watched older Lady Mustang soccer teams have success, have state championships, and you learned from that. But you also had to put a little bit of icing on the cake. An undefeated season was unheard of. But in Strongsville, it's not just something you imagine, it's something you do. And now those younger Mustangs can set their goals to having repeat undefeated seasons. So once again, we're proud of you, and congratulations. Thank you. At this point on our agenda, I will remind you all it is a school night. So if you want to escape and/or leave quietly, you may. Thank you again for coming, and have a good holiday season.
Don't forget your hardware, girls. You're gonna come get.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I still can't hear you.
See, it's fun. See you, friend. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we gotta go. We're gonna go over it.
Okay, next, after the excitement, we continue our exciting agenda with the treasurer's report.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Anagnostou.
There's always a downer. Or a letdown. Before I get into my agenda, I just want to congratulate Julia and the girls soccer team. That was an exciting season and fun to watch. So congratulations on the season. So moving on to my agenda, what I have is a discussion, before we get into items for consideration, item A, I have a discussion item for food services. And I'll get more into the background once I get into the presentation, but 5 years ago, we went out to RFP for food service management company. By law, if we want to continue with the food service management company, we must go back out for RFP every 5 years. So we're at that point again. This is our fifth and final year, so we must go back out to RFP. And I've prepared a presentation to kind of evaluate where we were and how we did over the last 5 years. And by using the same metrics that we did 5 years ago when we were evaluating whether to go out or not. So with that, if this works out, I'm going to ask the board to go to the front row. The screen is going to come down, and I'll go to the podium to present. The projector's coming on. There it is. Is there anything I got to... Andrew, is there anything else I got to do, or is it going to kick on? What's that? I think he went to go do something. Do we got to switch the input? We got to switch the input? That's what usually happens, doesn't it? Let me make sure this is... There we go. Thanks, Andrew. All right. All right, so to go in the background, so during fiscal years 2015 and 2016, the Board of Education directed district administration to explore food service options to alleviate the general fund from subsidizing the food service program. During fiscal year 2016, the district issued a request for proposals from food service management companies to manage the program. 6 food service management companies submitted a bid. An internal committee was formed to evaluate the proposals, and then the committee recommended Chartwell's Compass USA to serve as the district's food service management company beginning in fiscal year or school year 2016-2017. By Board of Education vote, Chartwell's was awarded a contract to serve as the district's food service provider. By law, the contract is a 1-year contract with 4 annual renewals. So as mentioned, before we got up here, it was 2017 was the first year. And then this school year, fiscal year 2021 is the 5th and final year. To continue to use a food service management company for the next school year, fiscal year 22, the district is legally required to issue a new RFP. And then also with that, the district may elect to bring the management of the program back in-house through a food service director. So in the next few slides, I have some financial data, but due to the pandemic, I had to come up with some assumptions for last year and for this school year. So the purpose of the financials, for comparison data for fiscal year 2020, numbers are either through fiscal year 2022 or through February of fiscal year 2022, or I used February data if I needed to annualize the number and project it out the remaining serving days that would have been for a full year based on activity through February, just so we have comparison data. And then the current fiscal year 2021 is not included in the comparison data due to the number of remote learning days from the COVID-19 pandemic. This slide here, it's a little hard to see, but I have graphs on the next few slides, but this is the financial data, revenues, expenditures, over and under. The one thing I did want to point out on the bottom, I also have the calamity years, or the calamity days by year. The impact for the calamity days is every calamity day is about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of lost revenue. So keep that in mind as you're looking from revenues from year to year. So moving on to the revenues. So the graphs that are in green, the bars that are in green 2012 through 2016, this is when the food service program was in-house. And the slides that are in gray is when it was overseen by a food service management company. In fiscal year 2020 is a projected number based on activity through February. I analyzed it based on the trend that was happening through February. So in the year before we went out, in 2015, we saw revenues increase by 5%. And then in 16, they increased 7%. The first year of the management company that took over, it was a 5% increase, and then a 2%, 3%, and 6%. Overall, a 4-year average increase of 4%. The key is the last 2 years for me is where we were seeing that consistent trend that was trending upwards from 3% to 6%. Granted, a lot of things with the pandemic. One of the things I would like to have seen how this would actually played out, and especially with this year as well. Just as they were heading in the right direction. But with revenues increasing, as did expenditures. In the first year, expenditures increased by 5%. They came down a little bit, but decreased by 2%. And then the last 2 years, they increased by 3% each year for a 5-year average of, or for a 4-year average of 5%. But the key fact for me is in 2019, revenues increased by 3%, as did expenditures. And then in 2020, if it would have played out this way, revenues would have increased by 6% and expenditures only increased 3%. So it's starting to close that gap a little bit. This slide here kind of brings both revenues and expenditures together. In blue is the expenditure, or in blue is the revenues. In red is the expenditures. So every year there was still a deficit. As you'll see, expenditures exceeded revenues. But if you look at the gaps, in both years, when it was in-house and when it was managed by a food service management company, in some years there was a bigger gap, and other years there was a closer gap. But as we'll see on the next slide, in the last 2 years was starting to make up. For me, 2016 kind of sticks out. That was the last year it was in-house. You will see that there's a spike. That was the best year. To me, when looking at the data, a couple of things stick out to me. Is one, the previous year had 8 calamity days. 2016 had 0 calamity days. So there was 0 loss of funding due to snow days that year. And then also there were some expenditure reductions as we consolidated, as we closed the elementary school. So there were some costs that were saved there by not having a food service manager for that year. But that year stuck out compared to the comparative years. But drawing a line from, if we were to draw a line from 2012 all the way across, you can kind of see where kind of what I call like a ceiling. 16, we broke the ceiling, and then 17, it was, or not 17, 2020 was starting to creep back up and to 100,000. And if the trend continued, would have liked to see what would have happened this year if we had a normal school year. But we'd like to see that for many different things, not just food services. This number here, when we evaluated before, we looked at meals served. So with the number of meals served, it's also based on the number of students. So as enrollment goes down, number of meals served could go down as well because it's based on the kids that we have in the district. 2012, you will see it was between 2012 and 13, there was a significant decrease. And just keep in mind, that's the year. What happened in 13 was the first year of the new food service regulations about the ingredients in the food and what can be served, went into effect. So there was a decrease in participation beginning that year. And then the other key indicator for me is average meals per day and how much are we producing based on the overall. And as you will see, the last few years, it's kind of creeped up to the highest it's been based on average meals per day to where it was back in 2012. And then the next slide is, the other key indicator is participation rate. This is all meals, but when we look at participation rate, it's broken down by breakfast and by lunch. But the key indicator there for me is for lunch. But before we get into lunch, this is breakfast. So same concept as taking all the meals and breaking it down just to breakfast. 2015 is when we first implemented to not just the high school, but to the middle school and the elementary schools. 16 was at its best. And then we did see a disruption in 17, which was the first year of the management company, due to the transition and then also the middle school opening up that year as well. There was a lot of changes in the beginning of the school year. They started the school year without serving breakfast. And then in 18 and 19, it crept up. And in 20, this slide is just as of February, but you will see based on the average breakfast per day, it was trending back up for the last few years. And then participation rate, we ended last year with close to a 7% participation rate. Lunches meals served, although the number's gone down, but again, keep in mind it's with enrollment, the number of kids we have and that we have in the district, as that's been going down as the number of opportunity of the kids we serve. But if you look at the lunches per day, it's been consistent and moving upward the past couple of years as well. And then comparing that against participation rate for lunches, it's the highest it's been for 2019, it's the highest it's been since 2012. And then also if 2020 would have, this is as of February 2020, lunch was at close to 50% participation rate. And then when we looked at this data 5 years ago, we measured the revenue per meal and the cost per meal. So as you can see, the last couple of years, the gap has been closing. There's been a few years even while it's been managed by the management company and internally, they had those variances where those gaps, it came down. So the data was the trends were consistent. And then even the last 2 years, it was starting to get a little bit closer. So we'd like to see how the rest of the year and this year would have played out. So with that, just looking at the data, my recommendation for the process to where we're at is to complete and issue an RFP. But as we do that, we also look an option to compare the RFP results back to what would it be compared against if we brought it in-house. With that, we would form an internal committee to review, evaluate, and make a recommendation to the Board of Education, like we did last time, whether it be with a food service management company or if we look to bring it back in-house as well. The committee will be similar makeup as the committee we had last time, which was 2 board members, the superintendent, treasurer, assistant superintendent, operations manager, elementary principal, middle school principal or assistant principal, and same thing with the high school, either the principal or assistant principal designee. Timeline, so there is a timeline that we would, if we were to go out for bid, that we would need to move forward with in order to be able to implement for next school year. By the end of this month, I would need to complete the RFP. The RFP, the template is provided by the Ohio Department of Education. I have to fill out their template with our data. And then once that's completed, before it goes live, I must submit the RFP back to ODE, and they must approve it. Once they approve it, the RFP needs to go out live for 30 days. And while it's out there for 30 days, within the first 2 weeks, or after 2 weeks, there must be a pre-bid meeting with interested vendors to ask any questions. And last time when we brought them in, we also did a tour of the facilities. Depending on our situation, I don't know if we can do that this time, but we must have some sort of pre-bid meeting to address any questions or clarification questions that they might ask. And ODE requires a pre-bid meeting 2 weeks after the RFP has been lived. So if we're able to get the approval back from the Ohio Department of Education, my goal is to have the RFP live the week of January 18th, and then keep it open for a month, and then during the last 2 months, or the last 2 weeks of February going into March, have the administration evaluate the RFPs through a evaluation rubric that I have to create, and as part of the RFP, that evaluation rubric must be included in the RFP itself, so vendors know how they're going to be scored. And that evaluation rubric also has to be approved by ODE as well. And then during March, we could have, the committee can come together and do vendor interviews if necessary and evaluation, and we can make that recommendation as a committee. And then once we do come to an agreement, if we decide to go back out to a food service management company, prior to we make the recommendation, or prior to board action, I should say, ODE also has to review the outcome. So I would have to send them our process, any documentation with the process to show there was a pre-bid meeting, to show all the results of the bids, and that it was what they're looking for, was it a fair process? So I have to show that. They would give their blessing, and then the time frame would, once they approve it, they ask for 3 weeks time from submission for them to get back to us, looking at a May time frame to bring it to the Board of Education for consideration, depending on which recommendation we do. And this is just the draft timeline. It could change based on other factors and dates, but the goal is to at least, if we don't have it by May, to at least have it by June, so we know how to go. We know how to move forward for the next fiscal year. So that's all I had for the presentation, unless the board had any questions. Also, too, if we do decide to go this route, also the board to think about which two board members, if anyone's interested, to be on the committee as well. So if, Rich, I'll take your lead, but if the board wants to come back up to the podium to ask questions, the microphone's here. Yep.
Thank you for the presentation, George. It was almost as riveting as the soccer recognition. Did anyone have any questions for George?
George, as far as the cost that we have right now with our contract, can you just share those or kind of go through that real quick?
Yeah, so are you, for clarification, are you referring to the management fee and the administrative fee?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, within the contract, there's a administrative fee and a management fee. The management fee is about $32,000 a year, and every year, since the inception of the contract, it increased by, and it was built in there, it increased by the Consumer Price Index. And then also there was a administrative fee that right now it's currently at 0.07, well, it's really 7 cents.
I get
I don't know the correct term, but per meal served. And that comes out, on a normal school year, when I looked back at 2019, it was about 33,000. So if you take those two numbers together, the administrative management fee is about $66,000 that we pay to the management company to manage the program. All the other expenditures are essentially passed through. So the expenditures for the food service director, the cost of the meals, the cost of the supplies, paper products, any services in the cafeteria, that's paid by Chartwells, but it's also invoiced back to us. So it's all reimbursable. So the additional fee for having a management company is that management fee of about $33,000, and then the let's say 8 cents per meal served, which depending on the number of meals served, it's been averaging at about 33,000. So close to $70,000 as a management fee.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, how do you see those costs when we bring it in-house? Are those offset by hiring more people, or, you know what I'm saying?
Say that again, Sherry? I just couldn't hear the question too well.
Those costs of $65,000, are those offset by anything if we were to bring the process in-house?
So those costs, no, I don't think those costs would, because right now within the cost, we're paying the food service director. So that's being billed back to us. The only thing that would go away is overall, with that administrative fee and the management fee is the food service management company. They might provide direction, recipes, and support and training to the food service director. So those costs wouldn't be offset, but some of the resources that the food service director might have would no longer be available.
So we wouldn't have to hire anybody to,
Oh, we would have to hire a food service director.
oh, but that's,
But that
We
cost
already-
would offset as they're invoicing us back the cost of the current food service director.
we already incur that cost though.
Correct.
Now, yeah, okay.
It's their employee though.
Yeah. Will we hire the same person?
What's that?
Will we be able to keep that guy?
We-
Okay.
Yeah, there's some contractual stuff there, but
In the same vein, George,
like food service director sounds like a very specialized niche. If we brought it back in-house, do you think we'd have a large applicant pool? Like, would we have someone to choose from, or is it slim pickings?
To be honest, I'm not 100% certain. There's districts, so depending on the district, if someone finds it attractive, we might, and depending on our salary range, we might be able to attract an experienced food service director from either from a company that might be interested in leaving a food service company, or from another school district. And I know it's been a while, but kind of look, I don't know if he's paying attention. Look over camera if you've gone through this before. Has there been an applicant pool for food service directors if you've gone through this before?
No, before we moved to Chartwell's, we had a long-time food service coordinator, so we were not in the market for looking for that position at any time during my many years here. But it is a niche job. And so you're either going to find somebody that wants to move up the ranks, or somebody, as George said, that's looking for a bigger school district, maybe a financial opportunity closer to home. But with jobs such as this, we've seen a limited pool, wouldn't you say, like 10 to 12, qualified candidates. So it's always a possibility, but it's not like, we post for a principal job, we're going to get 100+ applicants. You're not going to get that for this type of job. Would you agree, Jen?
George, with your projections here, I mean, obviously we're closing the gap from expenditures and revenue and everything. Is there a year, if everything stayed this course, that we would eclipse that or see the inverse?
It all depends on participation, and then also with participation, it also depends on enrollment as well, based on the number of kids that are available to lunch. The other thing that we've kind of seen, it's kind of picked up last year, but the prior years was we saw a decrease at the high school, and it's because as more kids are going to College Credit Plus and other options, they're not in the high school all day like they used to be. So it's less opportunity. But no, I didn't. But to answer your question, I didn't go any further than 2021. I could do that based on February, based on the past 2 years increase as we look at it internally through the committee.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
George, I'm going to pause you for a second. Andrew, is there any way, we don't have any speaker turned towards the board, so it's very hard to hear what everybody's saying. Can you maybe turn up the outward speakers or help us out a little bit with anything?
I can try, but we might get some feedback.
Okay, so do it as best as you can without the feedback.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't mind around here, but it might take a minute.
Okay. Go on, George, I'm sorry.
That was it.
Yeah, that's my question.
Were you guys able to hear the answer?
Could you start over, please? We did not hear anything you said.
So
I'm just teasing, George.
oh no, I didn't even hear that question. I thought you meant repeat his answer.
Could you start at the beginning of your presentation?
Sure.
Should we go back
I
out
could
there?
do that.
Yeah.
My question was, now I feel like really loud. 5 years ago, we had 6 companies that came with a bid. Do we know, is it there's still those companies out there that will come back again?
I at least know a few of them because I've been getting random requests on LinkedIn and random emails from other companies, so I think we're on their radar. But there's the big ones. Chartwell's is a big one. Airmark, Sodexo, the Nutrition Group, and I think there was another one, Taylor. So they'll probably put a bid in as they did last time.
George, can you send us the list of the 6 that were from last time?
Say that again, Michelle?
Can you send us a list of the 6?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just some procedural. If we do nothing, we're bringing it in-house by default.
Correct.
So to give the public and fellow board members a little bit of history from my perspective, when we originally went down this road, part of it was financial and trying to be good stewards to the taxpayer. But my memory is we also wanted to improve the product. We wanted to, you know, you don't get a whole lot of compliments on school lunch food. But we did say if we were going to go through the exercise, can we be better stewards to the taxpayer and at the same time improve the product that we're offering? You know, we had the year of restrictive regulation that, for lack of a better description, made the lunches taste worse, and so people weren't buying them. So a lot of this was a reaction to that. I'm comfortable that we should move forward. Anything we can do to be better stewards to the taxpayer is obviously a plus. This will be an opportunity for us to see how we've done in the past 5 years and see whether Chartwell's can improve their offering or whether other agencies can improve their offering. But more importantly, I think it behooves us to say, based on what we've learned, let's compare that to in-house and make that another example of what we're going to do, and then we'll make a decision. One of my concerns is with the pandemic and all of the additional responsibilities we have from that. Can you take a look at making sure that our principals or our associate principals who have enough going on, if we bring them in, that we make sure to use their time wisely? You know, all of the companies will wine and dine us, not with real wine, but they will eventually show us their wares, et cetera. So I just want to be respectful of their time and their commitment. I know this is a big project for you. I know this is a big project for our business director, but we need to do it, but let's just be cognizant of that. Right. But unless there's any other questions, I think the direction from the board is to move forward. And we can discuss who the two board representatives are globally with all the other discussions we're having as far as responsibilities on committees and liaisons. We'll just make that part of the conversation.
Okay.
Anything else you need as far as direction is concerned?
No, I think I'm good.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. So moving on to my next items. The next two are related. So item B is a new fund for fiscal year 21. Be the recommendation of the treasurer that the following new fund be approved for fiscal year 21. It's a local grant fund, special cost unit 9601. It's an SEF grant for Generation Genius program. It's an interactive science for, it's going to be used for the middle school intervention specialist, Megan McClellan, applied for it, and the SEF granted her the grant, which can be found in item C for $125 for this program for the remainder of this year. And then item D is an appropriation adjustment, one for the grant, and then also we needed to increase the wellness funds that we received from the state. We didn't spend all the carryover from last year, and we're going to utilize some of the carryover to do an equity audit with the ESC. So 2 increases in the appropriation measure, which can be found in Exhibit A. And if there's no questions, that concludes my report.
Next on our agenda is Superintendent's report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micco. We really don't have a formal report for this meeting. At our next meeting on December 16th, where the board, we are going to be in red. We're red today, so on Wednesday the 16th. That's prior to our strategic planning discussion. The board will have I'll have a further presentation based on some guidance and updates. But just in terms of general work of the district, you know, as I've shared in my emails and shared publicly, we understand the challenges that remote learning causes for our families and for our students. But I appreciate everybody's cooperation, their participation, the dedication and work of our staff, our teachers, our administrators. Every time we've implemented from spring to the fall to now, the goal is how do we make it more engaging? How do we enhance it? How do we replicate as much as we can and keep learning moving forward? And our teachers and administrators have risen to that challenge and continue to do that. Nobody's arguing that in-person learning can't be replicated. but how can we, what can we do as safely as possible? The reason we are in remote learning, as we talked about, to remember, is the impact that COVID has had on our ability to adequately staff our buildings. As I've shared with some of our family members that have reached out to me or parents, it was a good decision when it was recommended. It was a great decision after we got past the Thanksgiving break. COVID hit our staff pretty hard the week of November 30th afterwards in terms of quarantines and isolations. We also continue to encourage that parents reach out to us to let us know when students have tested positive. We are assuming that some of those reports have gone down a little bit just because kids are not in school. We do get those reports through the Board of Health, though, but our staff continue to report with us. But the good news is the spike we saw the week after Thanksgiving is starting to come down. So we still have Friday left to add the data to, and the way I track the data is what was the highest number of quarantines in this building for the week, so we could see the impact on the week. And even in looking at that, in the majority of the buildings, we're on the downward trend. So again, we encourage all of our families, and I've encouraged all of our staff. We understand as we continue to move forward in the winter holiday season of the challenges with gatherings and family festivities and get-togethers, but we ask that everybody takes care of themselves and one another, because the propensity for another spike after the winter holidays is there, and we're going to continue to monitor that. But in terms of isolations and quarantines, we also look at this in terms of sports. We're monitoring the data as well as we continue to have sports continuing on, and we're trending in a good direction at this point in time. And obviously, the staffing reason, it alleviates a lot of the pressure in terms of remote learning because we don't need a substitute when somebody's teleworking. And so we do have substitutes in place for, unfortunately, some of our staff members are just not healthy enough to work. So we do have substitutes in place for those individuals. But I'd like to just thank Jenny and her department for doing a phenomenal job of staffing and continuing things going in remote learning. Dave for his team, for all the tech challenges that we've had as we go through the different blended frameworks, and I can go around and thank every director and the work that they're doing. Erin for the work she's doing with our virtual programming and curriculum, and engaging the work she's going to be doing for coming up for a PD day in terms of how we continue to engage in a remote learning setting. And so all that, I know Steve is here too, I see him back there. So all that Steve does and the work that we did, on Tuesday a couple weeks ago, we had everybody work from home in the best interest of everybody, and the work that his department has done to get things up and going for Wednesday, to get kids back, to get our kids back going that go to parochial school. So it's been a team effort, and we're doing okay right now, and hopefully we'll see that trend continue throughout the coming weeks. So unless there's specific questions or clarifications or things that the board would like me to have prepared for the 16th, I turn it over to the board for any additional questions you may have.
Any questions for Cameron? So I think it goes without saying, just like every individual, the board, the administration, we're following the news, we're following the data, and we will be back here in a week. And almost with everything going on, with a vaccine, with a surge, with following what's going on in Columbus, it almost seems too early to talk about it. So we will talk about it at length and deliberate about it to make an informed and wise decision next week, and then we'll get to the holidays.
Continuing on, we have no items under business services. Under curriculum, we do have we have multiple items, but one new item. It's a service agreement with McKean Education Group. Again, this is the Title I funding that's passed through that goes to some of our non-public school partners. Be resolved upon my recommendation that the board enters into an agreement in the amount of $1,780.43 for one part-time Title I instructor to service pupils attending Holy Family School under Title I federal funding administered to approved non-public schools by local districts as found in Exhibit B. If you take a look at items 2 through 4, these are corrections from the last agenda. We needed to alter the start date. We had it as November. They started in October. So item 2 is that adjustment for St. Joseph and John as found in Exhibit C. Item 3 is for that revision for Bethel Christian as found in Exhibit D. And item 4 is that revision for Incarnate Word as is found in Exhibit E. Any questions for curriculum? We have no items for student services, and then that takes us to our Assistant Superintendent, Jenny Pelko, for a Human Resource Report. Jenny?
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. Underneath Human Resources this evening, I have the following recommendations. Under E1, appointments for certificated staff, appointments for non-certificated staff, appointments for non-certificated substitutes, appointments for certificated athletic supplemental contracts, appointments for non-certificated athletic supplemental contracts. Under E2, changes in hours for non-certificated staff. Under E3, change in status for non-certificated staff. E4, contract extension for a certificated staff member. E5, continuing contract for non-certificated staff. Under E6, medical leave for certificated and medical leaves for non-certificated. Under E7, we have 2 volunteer track coaches. And that concludes my report.
And then we do have an addendum under technology, so if you find your green page there. So we have a revision to the Chromebook purchase increase. So be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the following revision be made to the August 6, 2020 technology agenda. The amount changed from not to exceed $125,000 to not to exceed $210,000. So giving a little, and there's no exhibit. So to give a little context, this was approved to purchase Chromebooks. Yes.
Why don't we take the motion
Sure.
and then we'll make a discussion? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? You're up.
So in this agenda, we approved a set amount not to exceed to purchase Chromebooks. We were able to purchase, we've talked about the challenges we've had with being able to purchase some Chromebooks. We were able to find a provider to get us a limited amount. We purchased those. So some of that original $125,000 was utilized to purchase a set of Chromebooks that are now in the buildings. Well, the good news is that same provider who's actually followed through in the past reached out to us a few days ago and said, hey, we've got some additional Chromebooks that we have available. And if you submit the order, we should be able to get those to you hopefully in December, if not right after the first of the year. I know Dave is still working with them to finalize that delivery date. But with this purchase, if it's able to be followed through, and they follow through like they did in the past, this would purchase enough Chromebooks for our entire freshman class at the high school. They would get the Chromebooks that we've been waiting for with the other orders that didn't come through. If you remember, we took our Chromebooks from first and second grade and filtered them up to the freshman class. So once those are in, we're hopeful after the first of the year we can get the new Chromebooks to the freshman class, take the current freshman Chromebooks, put them back to the first and second grade classrooms, and then we're back to one-to-one for the entire district. So this would authorize the ability to move forward with that purchase and make that happen. How'd I do, Dave? Okay? All right.
I just had a question about why the increase it's notable.
Yeah. George?
So why and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, the increase is the original $125,000. We used that to purchase $40,000 worth of the teacher Chromebooks earlier in the year, so that drew down from that. And then this new order for 500 Chromebooks is for $132,000. So it just would have exceeded the amount that we would have spent.
It's just the number of Chromebooks. We're buying more Chromebooks. Well, when you first approved this, and somebody correct me, this is my recollection, when you first approved this, we had multiple orders out there. So we were waiting for an order of 500 from this group and an order of 300 from this group. And so this was just for this one provider. It would get our Chromebooks for kindergarten. And then what we did is we used the additional Chromebooks to give to the teachers. And then we took the teachers' Chromebooks and filtered those back to the students. And so the reason for the increase is now we are purchasing we put an order for we want to order for 550. So when you take a look at that, that's the increase, is because we're basically saying those other orders are hopeful, but we don't see that they're a reality, that they're going to come through. So we're going to take this one, amend it. We're adding 550 additional Chromebooks, which takes you over the 125,000. Yep. Right, Dave? Okay.
So that we're clear, with that said, the Chromebooks that we have out there that we don't expect to be delivered, that money will go back to the budget.
It would are you anticipating to keep those, Dave, those orders, or for next year, or?
It depends on the supply chain and when we get these in. I can check with the vendors and see what the projected timeline is going to be. If the projected timeline has still been moved into later in the spring or summer, then, it might be more beneficial to use those Chromebooks for the fall instead of having to put a new order in and being put back at the bottom of the new one.
And so one of the things, and that's a great question, and so what Dave said, just so everybody could hear, that's, watching on YouTube, is that, it may be beneficial to keep those orders if we can get them in the fall. That way we don't start over in the process of the line that we're in. Buying these Chromebooks for the freshmen fixes a 2020-21 problem. The Chromebooks that are still out there in order, we still need to continue to progress forward for the 2021-22 Chromebook. So we've got end-of-life Chromebooks that are out there. We've got another freshman class that's coming up. So yeah, we need that order anyway. So we're not at risk. It would just be, which bucket of money does it come out of? But we still need those Chromebooks.
And so it sounds like we're pulling forward.
Correct.
And if we're successful pulling forward, then the future is where we would, I don't want to say see a savings, but we would see a reduction of spend in the future.
Right. We're buying 2 years worth of Chromebooks
At once.
in this financial period. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Would you take the roll, George?
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries.
And that concludes my report.
Before we move on, are there any other questions for Dr. Ryba and his superintendent's report? Hearing none, next is report on Polaris Career Center. Mrs. Bissell.
Thank you. We did have our December meeting earlier in this week. That was virtual, as it will be in January, so that is a change for us. We had been meeting in person. Two things of note in terms of COVID. They did see 5 cases this week, and so they have currently 6 cases, and that caused them to rethink things a little bit because all of those cases came in on Monday, so kind of in the consequence of the weekend period. So they did decide to close Polaris to high school students tomorrow and Monday, and then the rest of the week will be fine until Christmas break, and then they are still deciding what to do after Christmas break, so that's to be determined. And something exciting that you can check out too as members of our community is this is the time where usually they're doing a lot of recruiting, where they're in the schools talking to the sophomore students, and obviously they can't do that. So they've put together some really awesome virtual visits and videos that you can access. They're not up yet, but they should be next week. There's a virtual tour that is pretty fantastic, and it shows off the new facility very well. So check out their website for that. And then they do, if you have a sophomore or even a freshman that may be interested in Polaris in the coming years, they're doing short videos of every program that's offered there, so you can look specifically at the programs that might be of interest. So keep an eye on the website if you're interested in those things. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next is report on legislation. It is my turn this month. The message I wanted to share with the community, if you haven't seen it in the news already, but Senator Dolan has said that because of difficulty scheduling hearings, difficulty trying to get people in for subcommittee reports, et cetera, that the fair funding legislation will be delayed most likely until next year. I think everyone is cautious about that announcement. I think that's the nicest way to put it. But I will say, as far as Senator Dolan's concerned, he's always been a champion for Strongsville and for education in general. And the reality of it is that the next biennium budget is when this needs to be done by. So if it's done by December or it's done by June, it needs to get done. And I think that's the message we want to make sure that Representative Patton and Senator Dolan hear clearly. I don't think I need to worry about whether it's done in December or early next year, but we do need to get it done. And anything either of them need from Strongsville, we're ready to help. So that completes my report on legislation. Liaison and committee reports. Do we want to start with Seth?
Sure. Obviously, we had a pretty big, exciting celebration earlier, so congratulations to those groups again. And I also want to say congratulations to the music groups that were able to perform so far. I know there's a few that are going to be performing in January, but just the ability to adapt and come up with a new way to enjoy music was fantastic, and look forward to seeing the other groups in January as well. So congratulations to you guys. That's all I got.
Cherry?
Oh.
Do you have any reports?
PTA Council? Yes. I got an email from PTA Council President Katie Hullenberger, and she just wanted to extend her gratitude to Strongsville Council PTA. Would like to give a special thank you to the community for their donations on our 2021 Senior Scholarship Fund on Giving Tuesday. Each year, the Strongsville Council PTA provides thousands of dollars of scholarships to our graduating seniors. The support of the community, local businesses, and our PTA members is crucial to the success of our mission. She wants to extend a special thank you for the generous donation from Graley and Company, who co-sponsored the scholarship. Donation and sponsorship opportunities are still available for local businesses and members of the community. You can text the word Mustangs to, and the number is 919-626-3277, and she will send you, or you will receive a donation link. Or you can reach out to Katie directly at, and her number is 614-917-8271. And also, the food bank is still looking for donations, so you can donate to the food bank over there by, what's the name of that street? By the library. So, and the contact for that would be Hillary Yankello. I don't have her number, but I can provide that later.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Laura?
Yes, the Strongsville Education Foundation, the Board of Trustees had a meeting this morning via Zoom. To note, they elected their officials, their officers for the 2021 year. They talked about grants again. They've approved 2 grants for the district so far this year. And to note, since the Education Foundation was conceived, they've donated $238,000 to the school district. So I'd just like to give a thank you for that. And that was basically it. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have any reports?
City Council. So far this month, City Council has met once this past Monday, and the most notable thing at the moment is that they are beginning discussions about putting another 2 mil tax levy on the ballot to fund additional firefighters, since the levy that they had on the ballot in November failed. So those discussions have begun, so be on the lookout for those details in coming months. That concludes my report.
Ms. Bissell, can I just add on to City Council? So at the City Council meeting, they also approved 5 TIFs, which there was an article written about. So just to clarify, for those TIFs, that the school district is kept whole. So if you read the article, those dollars that the school district would have received if it wasn't TIF, we're still going to receive as a TIF. So just a clarification from the article that the district is going to be kept whole on those dollars.
And I just want to publicly thank City Council and the Mayor's Office as an example of our partnership that the school and the city has. They've always recognized the TIFs are and can be a useful tool for economic development, but used inappropriately, they can hurt the school district, and they've always championed making sure that the school district is not harmed, and we thank them for that. So next is board committee reports. Finance Committee. The next meeting is to be announced. Policy Committee. Do I have a report? We did have a meeting on Tuesday, December.
It was December?
It was in December. It was
Second, first, December 1st or 2nd?
Second. December 2nd was our meeting. Another rousing and exciting Policy Committee meeting. But we did, again, we joke about Policy Committee, but it is an important committee, and we go through our policies and make sure that that they have compliance with both state and federal law. So we went through a number of those, and we also discussed one that is so important that we are going to have it on tonight's agenda. So we'll discuss that more when we get there, and our next meeting is to be announced. Facilities Committee, the next meeting is to be announced, along with Business Advisory Council Committee. Next on our agenda is consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education in adoption of the consent calendar at this point means all items in the agenda with asterisks are adopted by a single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any requests? Hearing none, I do not believe there were any corrections. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any further discussion? Hearing none. George, would you take the roll?
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. Superintendent's timely information.
So as Mr. Roberts shared, we've had a great week or couple weeks of holiday concerts, and although we've had to alter a little bit, the location a little bit, it's been exciting, and the live streaming piece of it has been wonderful for family members that aren't local to be able to see and hear their grandkids or their family members perform. So we've got two events coming up. This Saturday, December 12th, we've got the High School Drama Club is doing their winter performance. It's a Christmas Carol radio play, so all of the kids are wearing masks. They're all separated. They all are reading their parts and working on their vocal performance versus physically acting. But because of copyright rules, we are going to live stream the performance, but we only can live stream it live. It will not be recorded at all, so because we can't. So if you would like to tune in, the 60 Seconds talked about it last week, but it is tinyurl.com/SHS Winter Play. So this Saturday, 7 p.m., put in that tiny URL, and you can enjoy at home with your family our drama club's performance of A Christmas Carol, a radio play. Then on Wednesday, you could either live stream, or if you're a family member and you have a ticket, you can come see our holiday concert for our choir department at the high school. So it starts at 6 p.m. with the Mustang Express, and then every 20 or so minutes, we've got the concert choir, all or nothing, treble choir, and cantorum. And again, that one is, you can see it live, you can see it recorded. Just go to SCS TV, and if you go to our main website, strongnet.org, right under the shortcuts right there, you'll see the link there to check out the final installment of our holiday musical celebrations. And then we start our winter break. Our students started on Friday, December 18th, and we look forward to resuming on January 4th. And next week, we will determine a plan for how we will resume. So with that, Mr. Miko, that concludes my timely information.
I would just like to add on to timely information. My favorite radio station on Sirius is 148, which is the oldies radio station, much to the chagrin of members of my family. But I'm really looking forward to the radio play, and I don't know if it's recommended or not, but I think it'll be fun to just listen to it. So I'm excited about that, and we'll see how it matches the old radio stations. But I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and not just for the actors and actresses, but for the listening audience. Next on our agenda is board policies. We have a only reading, better known as the first reading, second and third readings waived. It is revised policy 8330, student records. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Our discussion, I'll start. The change to this is to allow Polaris the ability to send emails to, in our policy, it'll be 6th graders through 12th graders. The purpose of that is to maintain compliance with our policy. If we don't make that change, they're not able to do that. And this policy is important to restrict who we share that information with and who we give that information to. But Polaris Career Center is one of our good partners, and it's important for them to be able to communicate with our students about their different program offerings. And with the pandemic, it's difficult to communicate with our students. So this, in my opinion, is a reasonable change to our policy. Is there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, take the roll.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solie?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. And I'm assuming at our next agenda, we'll have the
Correct,
first reading for the batch
That's
of
correct.
policies that were at our committee meeting. Next is Board of Education Other. We can start with Board of Education meeting dates. We have the proposed dates. The one change that I will highlight is, every year we plan or think about a retreat, but we're formalizing that and putting it on the calendar for the 29th of July. I think that's a good idea that we just commit to it at the beginning of the year. It's important that we do that for planning and strategy, so we figured we'll get it on the calendar. What I'd like the board to do is review that, and if they have any questions or issues, we'll be adopting this in January. The only one that's important is, well, they're all important, but the one that's important right now is making sure everyone's available for the January 7th meeting. Any questions on that?
Nope.
And then we also have our list of liaison and committee assignments. We have the current list. I think it's a great statement that everyone is willing to do whatever is needed to be done to be helpful, to be engaged, and to be a active board member. Everyone has pretty much communicated to me that they're comfortable. Take a look at them, think about them. If there's any horse trading that we want to engage in, or if there's anything that we think we can be more effective as a team, you can send emails, and then we'll finalize the discussions at our January meeting. That make sense?
Just for clarity, Mr. Miko, because these are typically drafted for a vote at the January 7th meeting, leave them as is unless we hear differently.
That is good clarity.
Okay, thank you.
Are we discussing the food service one now or through email?
The food service one won't be a board committee or a board liaison.
Okay.
That'll be headed up by George. So we'll be able to discuss that when it's appropriate. Next is board member professional development expenses. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves Sherry Buckner Salih's reimbursable expenses as outlined in the exhibit. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? I'll compliment Sherry specifically for taking the time out to become a good board member, and I'll compliment everyone because we all do that. Without any further discussion, take the roll.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solie?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. Special Board of Education meeting will be held Wednesday, December 16th at 6:30 p.m. Please note the 6:30 p.m. in the meeting room of the admin building. Does anyone have conflict on January 7th?
I don't think so. Good.
Hearing no conflicts, our Board of Education 2021 organizational work session meeting date will be January 7th at 7 p.m. in the meeting room of the admin building. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? Hearing none, take the roll.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. And then a housekeeping issue, we have a appointment of President Pro Tempore for 2021 organizational work session meeting. Just as an explanation, all our positions retire at the end of the year. So the first thing we have to do is open the meeting, but if you don't have a officer to do it, you have to have a temporary officer. So do I have any nominations?
I nominate Laura Hausum.
Do I have a motion for Laura?
So moved.
Second.
Give it to Michelle by a hair, the second to Mr. Roberts. Any discussion? I will just compliment Laura. You are eminently qualified. We look forward to our organizational meeting. Mr. Anagnostou.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. Congratulations. We do have need for executive session on the topics of
To consider the discipline of a public employee, to prepare for negotiations with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and to consider matters required to be kept confidential by law or regulations or state statutes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? Hearing none, would you take the roll?
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 8:40. We have no anticipated business afterwards. I would like to just recognize that on December 7th, 1941, a few days ago, it was the 79th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, the precursor to the United States entering World War II. It is good for us to remember the sacrifice of many Americans, especially in this time of pandemic. I think it's good for us to have an example of the country coming together for a common cause and a common victory, and that's what I look forward to in 2021. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much.